Welcome to the Clause YouTube channel.
Together, we strive for a safer, secure, and more stable world.
So, welcome to this edition of the Clause podcast series, which we do every evening. Today, we have two extremely distinguished people on a panel. We're really lucky to have them here. One is, of course, Ambassador Ashok Kantha. Neither of these people need any introduction. But anyway, I'm going to say Ambassador Ashok Kantha, who was earlier in the Ministry of Defense as Secretary, Professor Srikanth Kondapalli, now in JNU, another formidable expert on China. So since we have just that limited time, let's deep dive straight into the discussion. What I, as a what shall I say, someone looking in from the outside, was looking at is how do you see this recent? I mean, that's the question on everybody's lips, right? Is there a thaw? Does this mean anything? Where is it going? Ambassador Kantha, would you like to go first?
Well, there is some thaw compared to where we were in relationship, last year. In fact, since developments in Eastern Ladakh, when Chinese carried out transgressions at multiple locations, and for more than 4 years, our relations were in a bad place. That started changing once we agreed on disengagement. Then Prime Minister Modi met with President Xi in Kazan, Russia on 23rd October last year, and a process of re-engagement and rebuilding of relations started. That process has made some modest progress so far. You would have seen that just in last few months, we had visits of our defense minister, external affairs minister, and national security advisor to China. Though all were for STO-related meetings, but they had bilateral discussions also with their counterparts and other interlocutors. Foreign Secretary visited China in late January, and that dialogue was also taking place after a gap of more than 5 years. Now, what has happened as a result of this re-engagement is that borders are a little more stable, though not yet back to normal. We have not made any progress towards the de-escalation of troops. So for fifth consecutive winter last year, we had deployment of troops from both sides in fairly high numbers. That has changed. We still have some unfinished business of disengagement because there were so-called buffer zones, or what Foreign Minister described as steps of temporary and limited nature, but which involved restrictions on patrolling by Indian troops and grazing by Indian herdsmen in certain areas they're visiting earlier. I think that has not been set right. But in terms of what both sides described as people-centric contacts, some progress has been made. We are marking 75th anniversary establishment of diplomatic relations between India and China this year. So that's happening in a relatively low-key manner, and that's how it should be, because we don't want to give the impression that relations are back to normal track. We had resumption of pilgrimage to Kailash and Mansarovar. Just 2 days ago, we started giving tourist visas to Chinese nationals once again. Contacts between think tanks have been resumed. Trade relations were going on in any case, but the problems of asymmetry in trade has become worse. Bottom line is that while these changes have happened, none of the structural challenges in the relationship have been addressed. In fact, one can suggest that some problems have acquired a greater salience since Prime Minister's meeting with President Xi. For instance, we have this mega hydropower project in Medoc County on the lower reaches of Yalung Tsangpo River, very close to India-China border. The groundbreaking for that project was done by Premier Lee Chang just on 19th of this month. It has very serious implications for us. But project has been launched without prior consultation with India. We can discuss later about kind of battlefield collusion that we had between India and between Pakistan and China during that 4-day military standoff between India and Pakistan. We have several instances of economic coercion by China, denial of rare earth magnets, for instance, or certain specialized fertilizers. Foxconn being asked to pull back the technicians, or Chinese technicians for India, and so on and so forth. What I'm trying to suggest that problems persist in relationship, even while there has been some limited thaw. It's far from normalized relations. It's far from a reset in ties at this point of time.
I think, thank you. That's a formidable wrap up. I think that's interesting. Srikanth, what I would really like to ask you, and this is what much members of the public will ask, isn't this typical Chinese behavior? I mean, on the one hand, they will say, visit to China. They had that whole thing about Jaishankar's visit, Foreign Minister Jaishankar's visit to Beijing. On the other hand, they will do things like, the dam. They announced the dam, the project. They will bring back the whole Foxconn project, the rare earth magnets. So on the one hand, they will open up. On the other hand, they will put some problems for you. So how do you see this going? I mean, is this something we are... okay, I'm not going to put words in your mouth. How do you see it going?
You mentioned about the hands. So there is this Chinese concept of liang xiao. Liang xiao means two hands. So they have a soft hand, they have a hard hand, meaning soft hand alternates with hard hand in the sense of responses. So you mentioned rightly that, for instance, when Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri went to Beijing December, the Chinese announced the two counties in Aksai Chin. And then counties would mean something like our tehsils. And these are administrative bodies, and which means that investment will flow for the administrative buildings and whatever. And then slowly, for protection of these, the PAPF, People's Armed Police Force, the PLA, and other paraphernalia will come back with huge presence. So that in itself would be several thousand people or troops to protect them. So the soft hand, when they announced the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra resumption, as you know, in 1991, the Yatra began in Lipu Lake in Uttarakhand. And in 2015, the Nathula route was opened, but these were shut down after the Galwan incident in June 2020. So these are now being resumed. But while resuming this Yatra, the Chinese have also announced the Aksai Chin counties, two counties establishment. They also announced the dam construction at that time. So the soft hand, which is the meeting between Foreign Secretary and the Vice Foreign Minister Sun Weidong in December, is coincided with the hard hand, where their response has been so and so. And the National Security Advisor, Mr. Ajit Doval, visited in December last year, in October 2023, where the special representative meeting took place. And after that, they also have announced a few such things. But most important, I think, the visit by Dr. Jaishankar last week on July 14th for the SCO foreign ministerial meeting. Um, the Chinese also approached with this Premier Li Chang's visit to Tibet to construct the mega dam, $137 billion, 60 gigawatt capacity generation. So that is when Mr. Vikram Misri visited Beijing last December, he asked for the hydrological data exchange on Yarlung Zampo Brahmaputra upper reaches, but that has not been conceded yet. So what we have is what the soft hand so far has been the Manasarovar Yatra and the Indian embassy and consulates announcing the visas for tourists. Hard hand has been several. Soft hand is very very few instances of cooperation, but hard hand, competition and conflict, this is too many to recount, including the Chinese direct support to Pakistan. By the way, yesterday, Wang Yi, the foreign minister, met with General Munir, the Pakistani army chief, and reassured him of the support and also on terrorism related matters. So if Dr. Jaishankar's visit resulted in some discussions related to the bilateral issues like hydrological data, resumption of direct flights, so on, which they announced in future, near future, they will resume. But we have seen the China, Pakistan, etc. So I would just say that cooperation and competition and sometimes conflict, as we see the May 6th to 10th India-Pakistan conflict, where the Chinese played a very crucial role and hyped up the J-10C versus Rafale incident. So a lot of disinformation campaign, so much so the Indian embassy had sent an advisory to the Communist Party-led newspaper, the Global Times, to say, verify your facts, don't write fiction. This is a very strong comment from the Indian embassy to the Global Times. So cooperation combining with competition, soft hand combining with hard hand, Liang Shao approach. But I also see the Indian side saying a few things. For example, when Dr. Jaishankar met with Wang Yi, he said, you are responsible for the India-China relations. I hope you will improve the relations. Wang Yi has been in charge as the foreign minister for over a long period of time, with a short period of Chin Kang's tenure. So Dr. Jaishankar was reminding, he actually used these words that he is responsible for the India-China relations, which also means Galwan and post-Galwan things also are part of Wang Yi's responsibilities. So quite a diplomatic way of saying this, but very stark. We see those such stark statements also from the Indian side. So when Mr. Ajit Doval went to China, he mentioned about counter-terrorism, and that is still the weakest point in India-China relations. And when we see the Chinese position on Pahalgam, as well as post-Pahalgam, we could see the disjuncture between India and China on these issues.
In that last part, I was just wondering, because once the US designated the terrorist resistance front as a that designation came out, I think the next day Chinese made a statement saying that yes, we support the terrorism should not take place and all the rest of it. So I mean, a lot of people thought that this was China's way of trying to encourage the RIC, to trying to push us in a direction with the background of that whole, what's called the Sanctioning Russia Act 2025, Senator Lindsey Graham's, which talks of massive sanctions on India, China, and Brazil, for example, that sort of thing. So that, in that background, do you see that China would want to perhaps, I mean, we are not seeing anything yet, but do you think they will go in a direction of trying to get India towards them? If so, how do you see this happening?
On the resistance front, actually the Chinese took a different view. For example, soon after Pahalgam, April 22nd, Li Changchie, the ambassador to the UN and part of the 1267 committee, the Al-Qaeda committee of the UN, he and the Pakistani side, the ambassador, they dropped the word the resistance front from the draft resolution. They included BLA, Baluch Liberation Army, and the Majid Brigade, but removed the resistance front. So if the US is now bringing back the resistance front as the listed organization, but they have not put it up in the 1267 committee. It can be the State Department, but not the 1267 committee. So finally, it is the 1267 committee which would be more legitimate from a global counter-terrorism campaign perspective, rather than the State Department listing. Even though State Department listing is actually more powerful than compared with the UN because of the lack of teeth for the UN bodies.
Absolutely agreed. There is. I mean, this is just a sort of what I call a counter view in terms of what Ambassador Kantha said rightly, that the Chinese provided huge support to the Pakistanis during Op Sindoor. That it was not just the fact that 80% of the equipment is Chinese, the fact that there were satellite data being used and possibly targeting information, considering that there is a OFC cable linking the two countries to Rawalpindi, run by the Pakistani military logistics cell. But having said that, these are the fact that relationship was there, was well known to all of us, right? That we knew they had Chinese weapons, we knew they had this link. Was there anything new which was added during Sindoor, which would, I'm talking of solid reports, which would show that China actually gave them added fuel to the fire during Sindoor?
One is the one of the terrorists who was involved in Pahalgam. He was using the Peto series of satellite linked Huawei phone, which has messaging services, encrypted messaging services, which would be going only to the handlers in Pakistan. So this is a very direct, because Peto series of satellites has civilian and military channels, and these are all encrypted. And if you're using the Peto series, then you have to be very, very close to the Chinese establishment. So this is one direct, evidence that we have. Of course, the other are when they said, when Wang Yi called up the Ishaq Dar, the deputy prime minister and the foreign minister, he said we wanted a fair investigation. Chinese never had a fair investigation, even on COVID-19, when everybody asked for a fair investigation, which killed 7 million people across the globe. And they never had a fair investigation on the Urumqi incident in July 5th, 2009, when 189 people were killed in Xinjiang. They never had a fair investigation into this. So it is quite strange that they asked in other countries fair investigation. But if you recall the Pathankot incident, where India invited the Pakistanis to be part of the investigation, and Pakistanis went back after these investigations and said the Pathankot incident may have been done by the Indian agencies rather than by the cross-border terrorism. So we now, as Dr. Jaishankar mentioned, if there is an attack on India, anywhere in India, we will straight away bomb Pakistan. No investigation, no nothing. We know, we have come to a conclusion that this is, you know, uh, the discussion on that is sterile.
Absolutely. I mean, considering we've borne what, how many years? Since 1980s, terrorism. Before that, of course, there was a bunch of other things. So it's rather it's ridiculous to go around asking for proof. But Ambassador Kantha, can you come in on this? The direct Chinese role in Sindoor. I mean, was that, I mean, apart from the fact that they had provided all the missiles, etc., and that happened over a period of time, during Sindoor, did you see any direct Chinese role?
Uh, I think there are three aspects to China's support to Pakistan, beginning with the Pahalgam outrage and subsequently during, that 4-day military confrontation we had with Pakistan. One was diplomatic support that Professor Kondapalli referred to. In fact, Foreign Minister Wangi spoke to Ishaq and expressed support for unity and territorial integrity of Pakistan and also Pakistan's legitimate security interests. This
Yes.
is when it's India which had suffered this terrorist outrage where 26 people had been killed in cold blood. Uh, there was no condemnation. In fact, Xinhua report called it a shooting incident. Condemnation, in fact, the first time they condemned was after ceasefire had been arrived at, agreed upon on 10th May. And when Wangi spoke to National Security Advisor, he condemned, Pahalgam and terrorist incident. So one is diplomatic support, which was extended also in UN Security Council, as Professor Kondapalli mentioned, a very active support was provided. Second was, in terms of amplifying Pakistan's propaganda. And what happened this time was very systematic. In fact, propaganda which was emanating from Pakistan, the strategic communication which is coming from there, the way it was being relayed, not only within China, but in fact using a Chinese network globally was quite striking. So this, for instance, the Pakistani suggestion that there should be investigation, China immediately supported that, as Srikanth mentioned. Third, I think most disturbing aspect is that what happened during that 87-hour conflict. And this was not only deployment of advanced Chinese weaponry, which was talked about quite a bit in Chinese media. In fact, this was projected as success of Chinese defense platforms against advanced Western weaponry. But the way the Chinese provided ISR input, Srikanth referred to PETO, satellite navigation data. This was also like Chinese aircraft, J-10C. It was communicating with PL-15 missile, and it was through PETO. Then there was integration of Saab 2000 AVAX, Swedish AVAX, with Chinese defense platforms. This was all done clearly with China's assistance. There was also, reports about, targeting data, real-time data being provided to Pakistan about the presence of Chinese advisors when these hostilities were taking place. So what we had that India-Pakistan theater in a way became an extended theater where China was an ever-present factor. And this is something which has been commented upon publicly by Deputy Chief of Army Staff of India. And to my mind, this is a new normal that China and Pakistan are creating. On our side, we have carved out, greater conventional space for acting against Pakistan despite nuclear overhang, and we call it new normal. In response, we are going to witness much closer battlefield collaboration, operational collusion between China and Pakistan. This is going to very seriously impact our deterrence dynamics vis-a-vis both China and Pakistan. So we just, China doesn't have to open up a second front with us. They're present with on the Pakistan front as well.
Absolutely. I think that is extremely serious for us going forward. But again, taking that angle, how do you think China is going to look at this sudden, you had the field marshal having lunch with Trump, you have the whole China, the US-Pakistan relationship seemingly reviving. I'm not sure it is actually reviving. There is, of course, the critical minerals initiative, which is from the US government. There is the cryptocurrency, which is a private thing, and now they've just enacted their crypto law. So they've got that in place. And if indeed the US goes into Balochistan, as seems to be the plan, because that's where the critical minerals are, how is this going to impact Chinese-Pakistan relations, given that China came into Gwadar following, the US invasion of Afghanistan? They were so concerned. That's how that whole thing picked up. How do you see that going?
Tara, I think what we have to bear in mind that China and USA, in fact, have shown a fairly high degree of tolerance for Pakistan's engagement with the other side. You referred to Afghanistan. In fact, China was quite comfortable with the US presence in Afghanistan. I was in Beijing as a master at that time, and Chinese are quite anxious about what will happen if vacuum is created, how it will impact their own threat perception in Xinjiang, for instance. So this is an area you're aware that how China and USA worked very closely along with Pakistan in anti-Soviet Union, pro-Mujahideen operations. So there's a long track record of China and USA working together in Pakistan. Now, even today, China gets very worked up about our strategic alignment with USA. They tend to look at their relations with India through prism of their strategic confrontation with USA. But when it comes to Pakistan, they are relatively comfortable because, in fact, they would like to USA to, for instance, help Pakistan in getting IMF support. This is the 28th IMF package for Pakistan, which wouldn't have been possible without US support. And China doesn't want to underwrite Pakistan's economic recovery. There will be red lines, if USA gets involved in Balochistan as it is. China is very uncomfortable there. It has a real security problem in terms of presence of its personnel in Balochistan. It will be worried if USA get involved, but that's down the road. At this point of time, I don't think China was particularly concerned that Field Marshal Munir had a luncheon meeting with Trump. I'm sure Pakistanis were keeping their Chinese friends fully informed about their dealings with the USA. US India-Pakistan relations are still very complicated. They are nowhere comparable to extremely close and strategic linkages between China and Pakistan. And that's possibly the most durable strategic relationship we have seen in our
Sorry.
part of the world.
Srikanth, would you like to come in on that? I mean, do you see the US role, the US sudden interest, Trump wanting mediation, Trump getting into Palestine, all that, will that affect? And of course, I mean, I'm not really sure what is Trump's policy on China because it seems to change day by day. But do you see all of that affecting the China-Pakistan relationship?
Well, much of this is classified. We do not know exactly the conversation between Trump and Munir and Wang Yi and so on. But having said that, the issue is we heard, as you also mentioned, about the critical minerals in Baluchistan. But we also heard about Iran factor and Israel factor in terms of Pakistan, and also American bases in Pakistan. So we heard also that China has taken this as a red line in China-Pakistan relations if the American bases are put up in Pakistan. So that is one factor I think the Chinese are really concerned about. The second is China is interested in Pakistan. When you look at the conversation between Munir and Wang Yi, their bottom line is CPEC protection and the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor infrastructure and others. Secondly, on terrorism, because there are 34 Chinese who were killed in Pakistan so far. And the last one was last year at the Karachi airport, outside the Karachi airport. So terrorism would mean China would like to put up its police stations in Pakistan. That violates the Pakistani sovereignty. So there are sensitivities, and Pakistan is not able to deliver on its promise on protecting Chinese citizens in Pakistan. So this is the second factor that Wang Yi referred to in his conversation with General Munir. So the second, I think the third Chinese, interest in Pakistan is how to balance India, because they don't want to see a rising India and they want some, guardrails on rising India. China hardly contributed to the rise of India so far. No investments, $8.2 billion investments. In fact, they probably had sapped India by having a huge trade deficit, not really helping India in terms of the rise of India. The India-China joint statements mentioned about simultaneous rise of China and India, but hardly China contributed to the India rise. Manufacturing sector, for example, President Xi came to Delhi in 2014, promised 2 manufacturing centers in Pune and Ahmedabad. Nothing came out of it. And also other infrastructure projects, the high-speed railway line between Chennai and Delhi, and initially $100 billion investment, but later he toned down that to $20 billion investment. When Prime Minister Modi visited China in 2015, there were a lot of deals, but nothing really has happened out of these deals. So the third factor is how to balance a rising India. So that is how Pakistan is able to do, including post-Pahalgaon related events. So I would look at from that point of view.
Okay, we welcome Lieutenant General Dushyant Singh on the show, and we are so glad he could join us. Over to you, General Singh, on any questions you might like to pose to the panelists.
A very warm welcome.
Yeah.
First of all, a very warm welcome to Professor Kondapalli and Ambassador Kantha for having agreed to come to our show. And this is going live, so whatever we say is going to go to our audience, and not only now but later on. So I was just listening to a podcast a few minutes back while I was traveling in my car, and it was talking about the Rakhine corridor. And somehow, what he said was that there seems to be a convergence of interest as far as the Rakhine corridor is concerned between US China. So, how do you look at this kind of dynamics developing on our eastern flank? Well, on the western flank, we have had enough discussion as to what are the interests of China and what are the interests of the US. Our eastern flank seems to be slightly at the lower edge of visibility and discussion. So, could we have your views on how is the uh, Chinese activity is going to pan out in Myanmar, especially in the light of the fact that Ulfa came out and said that we have carried out some kind of a, cross-border attack with swarm drones, etc. And Myanmar recently, the junta has been winning. That's another interesting development which has taken place. They have taken over two locations from the rebels. Now, what kind of a game is being played? Just because the the US has come into this area, that the Chinese have started supporting the Myanmar junta and going away from the rebels. So it seems to be a very complex situation. Your views, both Professor Kondapalli and Ambassador Kantha, on this issue. So we can start off with Ambassador Kantha, because Professor Kondapalli just spoke. So after that,
Yeah,
we'll have.
okay. Uh, when it comes to Myanmar, we have to recognize the fact that China is a very huge factor in that country. And the way it has manipulated, it links with junta on one side and with insurgent groups on other side to put pressure on both of them. In fact, this has been a sustained pattern of behavior on part of China. Uh, Now, this so-called humanitarian corridor that Americans have been advocating, and Bangladesh Army itself is not very comfortable about it. Frankly, I don't see, what's going to come out of it. Uh, I'm not sure China will be sort of uh,
Happy.
working with happy with that, or working with USA to promote such a corridor. In fact, if anything, by and large, it would like to keep USA out of Myanmar, not get a major, you know, uh, footprint in that country. Uh, for us, the challenge is that uh, how do we manage, our engagement with ethnic groups, insurgent groups, which are controlling, areas contiguous to India. Perhaps we can take a leaf out of China's playbook there, because same thing is happening on China-Myanmar border. And in that case, Chinese are very comfortable working with the concerned insurgent groups. So, uh, a sort of pragmatic stance there will help, because you referred to junta making some gains recently, but it remains a fluid situation where large chunks of Myanmar are not under control of Naypyidaw government. So willy-nilly, as a neighboring country, we have to deal with whosoever control certain areas.
Yeah, Professor Kondapalli, your views, because it seems that we are in a flux here. Uh, it seems like US is trying to contain China on the eastern flank and China on the western flank. India is caught in the middle. Bangladesh and Pakistan seem to be playing double game, sometimes supporting China, sometimes supporting the US. So we are kind of in a very very confused track. So how do we go ahead with this kind of a geopolitics which is going around our country, around the periphery of our country? It seems earlier the great game was being played in Afghanistan. It appears now it is being played around us. So how do you think we should go actually take our actions forward in this kind of a dynamics?
First, I wanted to say about the Rakhine state. Uh, remember General Dushyant Singh, ONGC lost the Rakhine state drilling platforms, drilling for the Chinese companies when we had actually the contract long ago, some 10 or 15 years ago. I don't remember the exact time, but so that is the entry of China in Rakhine state. And Chakfu port is there. CMEC
Yeah.
projects, China-Myanmar Economic Corridor projects, which Foreign Minister Wang Yi had inaugurated. Those were there. And the Arakan army is also partly funded by the Chinese in Rakhine state. Even though China is dealing with the military junta, backing politically, militarily, diplomatically, they are giving a lot of support. But they also have a different track of supporting the Rakhine state and the Arakan army. And you rightly mentioned about the US, China, India, interests here getting animated in the Rakhine state because of the convergence of their interests, not harmoniously but in competition with
Yes.
each other. So this is the background, and there is a lot of Chinese rare earth metal copper from the Rakhine state. They are extracting a lot of these, and many there were NLD, the Aung San Suu Kyi's party cadres have been in protest against the environmental fallout of these
Mining.
mining projects in copper mine and others. So there is a huge Chinese interest in this region, but they're also concerned with the Kokang uprising. Some 55,000 Kokang they have been shunted out to Yunnan province, and some 14 or 15 refugee camps have been opened up by China for these rebels. These are Chinese business people who have intermarried because these are all matrilineal societies. And the whole area, I've been to that area and on the China-Myanmar border, and you could see all over the such matrilineal families, inviting menfolk from different areas. So it's all demographically kind of distributed. But there is also the Kachin and Shan states, the ethnic conflict, which had resulted in this Kokang, factor. 55,000 people have been shunted out, and they put up these camps. So on the second issue, how do we address this? On the one hand, we ourselves are into the counterinsurgency and the cooperation that is required from the junta in Myanmar. That is one which is, since the Operation Rhino, we have been into this as a part of our national interest. So that's number one. Number two, of course, we are also concerned with the Saint Martin phenomena,
Island.
where Americans want to create one by amalgamating some areas in Myanmar and Bangladesh.
Yes.
So that is a big concern because of the air bases and other naval things that they plan to have in this area.
Yes.
So our interest basically is counterinsurgency at the moment. and we narrow it down to that level. And I think we have some good cooperation when we move forward in Myanmar-India borders several kilometers inside to chase the insurgents. So that is, I think, number one. Number two, of course, we have the multimodal projects, which has got stuck. Kaladan
Kaladan. Kaladan.
multimodal project. There is a short stretch which is not yet completed because of this insurgency and ethnic strife. We want to connect that to Thailand and Vientiane, but we got stuck with this small patch. And so that is where we are looking for some progress. A small patch of 5 or 6 kilometer railway line is to be put up so that we connect to the rest of Southeast Asia. So that is where our interests lie at the moment. And of course, the stability in overall region in this.
Myanmar. Yeah, so very interestingly, you've raised two, three issues. As far as the road connectivity goes for of the Kaladan project, that falls under the Arakan Army's control. And Arakan Army, on a number of occasions, has offered this kind of a proposal to India that they would be willing to, allow this project to go forward. But India has got a policy where it says that it will only, interact with the government in power, and in this case, it is the military junta. So that position, do you think we are going to change that position? That is one. So that unless we do that, we will really not be able to move forward as far as Kaladan is concerned. In Hindi, I keep saying, उसका नाम Kaladan नहीं था. Actually, उसका नाम कुछ और था. It was Koladon or something like that. The exact pronunciation I am not remembering now, but because we keep calling it as Kaladan, there is some black magic which has gone into this particular project, and for the last so many years, we find that this project has never seen the light of the day. So unless we change this position, so how do you look at India changing our position as far as Kaladan project is concerned? I mean, I would request Ambassador Kantha, because he has been dealing with the government, government to government talks, etc. in the past, not necessarily in this region, but knowing our psyche, do you think we are going to change our position of dealing with the Arakan army?
Well, in fact, I suggested earlier that we can take a leaf out of China's playbook. We have to deal with entities, groups, insurgents who are controlling certain areas which are of strategic interest to us. You refer to Arakan Army, you refer to the project, whether it's Sitwe or Kaladan multimodal project, or highway, linking northeast with Thailand. Though, frankly, I don't think these projects can be completed at this point of time, when Myanmar is going through a virtual civil war. And even if some missing links can be completed, this will not be a viable commercial link with ASEAN, as we hoped trilateral highway to be. In fact, there are, I don't remember the exact details now. I used to deal with it a long time ago. There were a lot of missing bridges which needed to be constructed. So it's not only one patch which needs to be fixed. To my mind, this is something it will be difficult to undertake while Myanmar is going through the current turmoil. But your suggestion on revisiting some of our policy positions, to my mind, we should do that. Even when there was earthquake in Myanmar, are dealing only with Naypyidaw regime had its limitations. Because we have to accept the fact that they are not in
Control
control of good parts
most of
of
the,
the country.
yeah, about
So,
almost
this
60% is out of their
so
control.
the traditional logic that we deal with the government of the day doesn't quite apply when government of the day is not
Effective.
controlling half of the country. So
Yeah.
we have to be more pragmatic, and actually on the ground we are when
Okay.
it comes to
Okay.
I understand anti-insurgency operations, certain transborder activities. We do deal with whosoever is there on the other side.
Yeah. Looking at the broader picture now, I wanted to get Dr. Tara in here because she's known Pakistani expert, and I would like to ask her comments as far as this game which is going on our eastern flank is concerned. The ISI, Pakistani DG ISI and his so-called gang of ISI people have visited almost 2 or 3 times
Mm.
in this particular region. How do you look at this? Is it directed against India, or is it directed against our northeast, where there is a lot of movement taking place of the US, like just Professor Kondapalli referred to Saint Martin, and crafting a separate state. A lot of conversion is taking place. This was reported by the former DG Assam Rifle, General Nair. He in fact gave figures as to how these conversions are taking place in a very, very methodical manner. Do you think the ISI is operating in Bangladesh for an anti-India kind of an action, or it is going to be more to do along with the US to contain China? Pakistan can be expected to do anything. They are the most irrational people going around. So over to you. I would like you to comment on this aspect. How do you look
No,
at it? Although it's a new area for you, focusing Pakistan into this region, but let's try it out.
no, I think you're right, and absolutely right. They are very, very capable of playing different countries at the same time. I mean, they've done this, as you know, in back in Pakistan against Iran, pro-Iran, then with the US against US. So they do this all the time. I mean, I'm looking at that whole comment by the Bangladesh chief CEO saying
Yes,
that
yes,
Northeast has been, it is open for business, it is landlocked. So the DG analysis, whom I think DG ISI analysis, he
yes,
visited
yes.
that place and we had met him also. So, I mean, any country will use an opportunity that it gets. And here is this man saying, let's open up Northeast. So why not? And they have, as you know, long, long history in that area. They've also had, I think, quite recently, there was some talk of a of a boat which had berthed in Bangladesh, which was carrying unknown number of items. Equally, there was an aircraft from the US which came in, as that also came in the news, with a bunch of intel folks in it. So it's a bit of a mishmash, but I'd love to open that question up to, say, the others. How do you see this shaping up? Say,
Yeah,
Srikanth, perhaps.
it is quite confusing. What I'm seeing is people are not realizing that this part of the region will start becoming very, very important in times to come. Probably more important than the Pakistani flank.
Absolutely, yes. And there's a multiple actors operating. So yeah,
So,
Srikanth, maybe
so
Srikanth would like to come
yeah,
in.
yeah,
Uh,
because it's his turn
uh,
also.
on the infrastructure projects, the Kaladan project starts with Paletwa, and we plan to connect that to Mizoram. And this
Yes,
is where the Arakan army controls the Paletwa
correct.
because they occupied the whole region. And the problem for India would be that since Arakan army is trying to have self-determination, and they have also driven away the Rohingyas.
Yes.
actively, and this is a factor now in terms of demographics, both in Bangladesh and in India. So we are kind of weighing our options in terms of an independent Arakan army-led, region, and what should be because it has implications for the multimodal project. But since the whole region has been mentioned, I just wanted to say on the Chinese role, we have not seen any decline in arms transfer, small arms
Okay.
transfer. We have not seen any decline in drug trafficking in the region, and the insurgency related Manipur itself
Activity.
has indicated to the continuing insurgency in that region and drug cultivation, etc. But to expand this, there is the mention about Bangladesh and the Northeast. Um, of course, it's a major concern, but what China is doing is a systematic entry into this through the Belt and Road Initiative projects, both in Myanmar as well as when Prime Minister Oli visited China last year. He had concluded the implementation part of the BRI. And in Bhutan, which has no diplomatic relations with China, but there's a lot of tourism from China and telecommunications controlled by China. And, in the northern areas, especially in the Sakteng Monastery, China is building up these well-off society villages. They already
Yeah.
built 628, and most of these are inhabited by ex-servicemen. And so the Chinese state is coming onto the borders with India, Bhutan, Nepal. On an average, about 100 of these people stay in the well-off society villages, and these are bang on the border line of actual control. In Lungchu, they already constructed one, which they occupied in 1962. And so this is one which is spreading fast. And so I would see this as a more structural element rather than the Arakan army and the military junta in Myanmar. Structural in the sense they are coming in a very concerted manner. There is investment, dual use infrastructure, PAPF to provide security, People's Armed Police Force, their paramilitary, and they're also providing the PATO series of satellites, communication networks for all these. So it's a very structural one which is coming on the borders with India and the neighborhood with India.
So
We,
I
we also should not forget that they are coming into the Indian Ocean in a different track.
yes.
8 to 12 roughly submarine visits, surveillance ships visits nearly 10 in a year.
Yeah.
And also, since we are talking about Myanmar, there is the Great Coco, signals
Island.
intelligence facilities located.
Coco Island.
So it's both ways, continental and the maritime dimension. I'm sorry, sir, for interrupting.
No problems. In fact, so what I'm seeing today is that in between India had achieved a kind of a you know uh, release of the choker necklace which was getting struck around us, and but now it seems that the choker necklace is getting more and more tightened because of the fact that now we have a country which is the soon going to be the third largest economy. We are growing at a reasonably good rate. In fact, yesterday I was listening to a talk by Professor Ajit Ranade where he said that for the last 40 years, that's a long period, although India may not have shown a very dramatic growth, but we have never had an year of contraction. We have always grown, except for the COVID year where we did suffer, and COVID can be taken out as a kind of a outlier. Other than that, we have been always growing positively. Now that is something which we need to take it as a compliment. So therefore, getting to be the third largest economy is not very far in the future. So probably now it seems that everybody is going to haunt us. So final my observation is in one line, and all of you can then contest it or accept it, is that we are going to see a contested growth in the future, whether it is China, whether it is US, or whether it is our neighbors around us. They're going to use India to ensure that we remain not a galloping economy. We are not able to be in competition with them in some form or the other. So, if this is going to be the case, I think India needs to possibly lay more stress on ensuring that it becomes more and more strong security wise, and keep the economy in consonance with this particular aim. So maybe certain areas may take a back seat, but unless we ensure a secure economic growth through a robust national security, I think we will somehow get tripped. And for the tripping, people had given two, three examples, like a war could trip us. A war could trip us very, very drastically, going back as far as the economic story is concerned. So, if this is the future, one line or one minute comment from all of you, and then we can take few odd questions as to, do we think now we are in an era of conflict, competition, and growth all going together?
Well, General, if I could come in on that, of course, we are in an era of conflict, competition, confrontation, no doubt about it. It's a particularly fraught moment geopolitically. But my own feeling is that we should avoid falling in this siege mentality trap. Uh, uh, if you look at, for instance, we're discussing China in South Asia, China in Indian Ocean region. I think there has been a pattern of behavior which has been emerging over last 12 years or so. I look at the Communist Party of China work forum on diplomacy in the periphery. This which took place in October 2013, in a way, as a turning point, because under Xi Jinping they started looking at South Asia as part of their strategic periphery. And in case of Indian Ocean region, they have started looking at two ocean strategy, where they prioritize Western Pacific, but also regard Indian Ocean as an area of their operation. Now, in case of South Asia, they are investing resources in the way they had not done in the past. BRI, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, projects they have carried out as part of these initiatives. In defense cooperation, if you look at China's defense supplies, three partner countries, top three partner countries are all from South Asia: Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Myanmar. And it's a very extensive defense cooperation they have carried out. They are involved in domestic politics of these countries in a manner which was the case earlier. They are trying to shape uh, political outcomes in these countries. Pattern of elite capture we have seen. So what I'm trying to say that they're looking at South Asia as a region where they're seeking strategic influence, if not strategic dominance, and they're not giving any primacy to India there. How we should respond, that's a separate story altogether. We need to discuss it separately. But we have also made mistakes which created openings for China. So looking at all this as a effort on part of China or USA to slow down rise of India only because we are going to emerge as third largest economy. I think it's much more than that. This is part of pattern of Chinese policies, which has been in evidence for more than a decade.
Yeah, Professor Kondapalli, quick comment, and then we take a few questions.
I have two comments on this. One is what we are doing with China currently is a tactical kind of arrangements.
Good.
There's so much of discussion at various levels, but it is basically the structural hangover is the territorial dispute, which may flare up in future. And so what we are doing is basically tactical. The second comment I wanted to make is if India is going to be the third largest economy, it hasn't really shown so far the grand strategy reflecting to the third largest economy status. When China became second largest economy, they unveiled Belt and Road Initiative, they unveiled Global Security Initiative, Global Development Initiative, Global Civilizational Initiative, etc., etc. But India is third largest economy by 2018. 2028 or so. But we haven't seen the South Bloc coming out with a vision. I think Klaus has to work on it with vision.
I think the JNU is more suitable for that. Dr. Tara, quick comment by you. Are we now going to be a contested nation being contested by everybody? And so therefore our security apparatus has to become more and more robust. I keep saying खुद ही कुकर बुलंद इतना कि खुदा बंदे से पूछे बता तेरी रजा क्या है.
No, I think I just.
You understand what I said? I can explain what I said. I said this in Urdu, which meant that you make yourself so big that you become the deterrent, and the God says, "What do you want? I will give it to you."
Okay, we're not there yet. Nowhere near that yet. But I was just thinking of this, paper from an extremely prominent US institution, which I'm not naming, which specifically said that encouraging India's rise is not good for the United States. That what
Yes.
done earlier with France, etc., that should give us the experience that India should be sort of pulled down. I'm not saying that is US policy, but if such a prominent think tank writes that, then it's worth looking at. I'll stop there.
Yeah. So some questions. Would you like to take, Dr. Tara? Or
I think
there's the last one. There's a question from Shritik Kothari. Yeah. The Han mentality was to label everyone outside of Tibet as savages. So they have never seen us as equals. Given this, should have been that. Given this, shall we develop kinetic abilities to match him or just enough to deter him? Who would like to? We can go one by one so that we don't waste too much time. This one for Ambassador Kantha.
China's perception of India has been very mixed. In recent contemporary period, they have not quite accepted India as a peer nation. In fact, this is one of the structural or fundamental problems we have in India-China relations. that they would like to see a hierarchy of nations in Asia where they are the preeminent power. India is not going to accept a subordinate role. So China talks of multipolarity globally, but not a multipolar Asia. In that context, actually, they tend to sort of run down India. There's no doubt about it. Our response really cannot be, trying to match China militarily in absolute terms. Let's acknowledge the fact that when it comes to GDP, they are 5 times as big as India. When it comes to defense budget, I was looking at CIPRI data. Last year, it was China's defense budget was $310 billion. Ours was $86 billion. They have a larger threat perception, which is not limited to India. For them, the primary strategic challenge is USA, whereas for us, primary strategic challenge is China. So, seeking equivalence or parity is something which will lead us into a very awkward position. What we need to do is to ensure that we have requisite deterrence, which will be asymmetric in character, to discourage China from, say, trying to change status quo in border areas or pressurize us elsewhere. So it has to be a more sophisticated, strategy rather than just seeking equivalence, which is not feasible in foreseeable future, in fact.
So this one for Professor Kondapalli. Uh, if ask if China is aware of US foray into Myanmar, then could it react by promoting Cambodia-Thai conflict to eject pro-US regime in Bangkok? Would China do this if it sees strong threat to its Yunnan province? Now this he has taken it a little further by going as per the current trend of expanding conflicts all over the world. But I doubt if this is going to go that far. Your comments?
Well, I think the basic uh, Cambodia-Thailand conflict is over a Shiva temple. And India cannot get involved in this, in what we have seen just the last 2-3 days. I think ASEAN should be kind of involved in the conflict resolution, and they need to get these things back on track. It is over a temple that was given to
Yeah.
Cambodia, but Thailand claims, and so there is this conflict. So I think India should not get involved in this. One, it is about a temple, which is an ancient Hindu temple that has been constructed over 1,100 years before. And so this is a religious kind of tussle that is because the agreement in the 1950s that has not been abided by, and so the current conflict. So on that issue, I think we need to nudge the ASEAN if we can, because ASEAN has the infrastructure for that kind of a dialogue between the member states, and ASEAN declared on Myanmar, for instance, before. So that is what we should encourage the ASEAN to do. On Myanmar, US foray into Myanmar, that's a separate issue, I think, which we discussed earlier.
Yeah, so this is the last question we will take, and Dr. Tara, this is for you, because I'm trying to put you into deep sea, right? So while being rivals, US and China are both able to support Pakistan. Wherever Pakistan, I'll keep troubling you. In which place can India and China cooperate even beyond our immediate shared neighborhood, South America or Pacific Islands, maybe? So he's trying to make you guess. Uh, can US and China, they are supporting Pakistan. So can India and China cooperate? And if they can cooperate, in which areas?
Actually, that's a very interesting question. I have to admit, I hadn't thought of that. But yeah, why not? I mean, yeah, actually, why not? Why not in one of the countries of the global south, where, or even, in fact, I think there was initially some move to cooperate in Bangladesh. There was this whole talk of ports and things. Why not? It's possible, but not in our neighborhood. Okay, ideally in
Yeah,
a country
big no.
somewhere else. That's a big
Big
no.
no, big no.
Yeah,
But
but yeah,
it's a good way to think. What don't you think? I think let's
it's
break
very
this
out of the box
shackle,
thinking.
like Ambassador Kantha said. Let's not get into the seas mentality. Let's try to open new avenues. And of course, everything which we do with China and Pakistan, we should be careful as far as the trust factor goes. But if you have that on the back of your mind, I don't think we'll get surprised.
I don't see why. I think that's an excellent question, and I think we need to ponder on that a bit and see perhaps in some country in Africa, you know, that sort of thing. So yeah, I like that question.
So thank you very much to anyone wanted to add to this, because I thought,
No, no, I would just like to add that, uh,
yeah,
before we start thinking in terms of uh, collaborating in third countries, I think bilaterally there has to be a certain minimum trust, desire to improve relationship. That
absolutely.
is missing at this point of time. Yes, I mean, there are certain global challenges. We have worked together in the past. Climate change, for instance, even there, level of cooperation has dwindled. There are other issues like terrorism. We don't see eye to eye. Uh, so let's focus what we can do with China in our bilateral relations and in our part of the world, our region.
Yeah, but if I
So,
can just come in there just for a
yeah, yeah.
second. Ambassador
Sure.
Kantha, if we wait for that, we will wait forever. you know.
Uh,
So it's a
Tara, the point is that uh, it's a very important to be clear-eyed and realistic in our assessment, in our approach. Uh, China is not really being supportive of rise of India. It's not accommodating our interests, concerns, and aspirations. To expecting that somehow we'll become great partners in Africa is very unlikely. In fact, there again, our policies are not quite complementary. They are competitive in nature. So let's be realistic about it rather than harboring false hopes of cooperation where none exists.
Good, good. So, Professor Kondapalli, anything you want to add to this?
Yes, sir. One, I think we are cooperating in several areas: multilateral institutions, SEO, G20, BRICS, so on and so forth. And now RIC is to be revived from Russian, Chinese angles. We also are cooperating on climate change, as Ambassador Kantha mentioned. That equal but differentiated responsibilities, I think it has quite a huge impact in terms of how the Paris Declaration 2015 has an impact on. Thirdly, we are cooperating in the WTO. Of course, we have some competition there. The Indian nominee has been defeated by the Chinese in the WTO election procedure. So there is some competition, and also, of course, we both of us slap each other with anti-dumping duties on each other uh, in WTO. But nevertheless, there is some cooperation. We also cooperate in multipolarity related and others. Much of the meetings so far in the last 5 years between India and China have happened in the bylanes of the multilateral institutions, be it Rio de Janeiro, Durban, Johannesburg, or Kazan or others. So we do have some, but I agree with Ambassador Kantha that we have to be realistic on this. For instance, once Premier Li Keqiang, he passed away, but when he came to India in 2010, he said we will export to the third markets. Nothing really happened about it, but it's an idea for working in the third markets, producing for the third markets. That idea never came up, but idea was floated when Li Keqiang also addressed the CEO forum in Shanghai, in Mumbai. There was that idea of cooperation, but none of these ideas really materialized. But there is no harm in having this cooperation if things match up on these aspects. Yeah.
So I guess we should end here, Dr. Tara. I think we have extended our guest more than 1 hour, and but it was an interesting discussion. And I thought let me share the last one for laughter. Uh, चाइना में एक इंडियन लॉबी बनाना होगा. So with that, I think we should call it an end to our discussion. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Tara and Ambassador Kantha and Professor Kondapalli. We should have more of such intellectual discussions and not the jingoism which goes around with so many other YouTube channels. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Jai Hind. Jai Hind. Thank you, General, for inviting us.
Thanks.